Good to talk to you again, Sarah. Is it time for the state government there, the acting Premier James Merlino, to seriously look at ending this lockdown prematurely? He's got it in place for another 7 days. Should he be looking at lifting it on the weekend or at the start of the week?
Well, Chris, good afternoon. I'm not privy to the health advice that the Victorian government is receiving. All I know, in regional Victoria, there's a huge amount of concern because while the lockdown has eased in regional Victoria, many businesses are still hurting. Some businesses are still forced to be closed. And I note today the Victorian Regional Chamber Alliance, including chambers of commerce from Ballarat, Bendigo and Geelong, has asked for the state government to ease this lockdown even further because it's just having the most horrendous impact, obviously not just in regional Victoria, but right across our state.
But, you know, we always talk about business and that's important. It's heartbreaking. We spoke to Paul Dimatina again last night. You could just see the stress and strain on his face. But casual workers who need their income to pay their rent, they're going 2 weeks without any pay. Students, unbelievably, given the health advice we all know about children and the coronavirus, children kept away from school, people not being able to see family and friends. We talked before about that shocking decision capping a little boy's funeral to 10 people. All this stuff creates so much pain, and yet we know today there's no infections again outside the known contacts. In other words, the lockdown is superfluous.
Well, Chris, I have been a very strong advocate for not locking down Victoria. I was very prominent in my criticism last year, and I would like to see Victoria manage things the way they are managed in New South Wales and other states where only hotspots are locked down as required and not the entire state. So I would like to see a dramatic rethink in Victoria. As you say, this is causing enormous damage. We know that this lockdown for just 1 week will cause economic damage to the tune of some $1 billion in Victoria. But I am pleased, of course, we've announced the COVID disaster payment. We have seen regional Victoria open up, but the damage is really very widespread still across regional Victoria.
Yeah, look, that payment is important, but I'm really conflicted over that. I've spoken directly to people who are going to get that, people on casual wages in Melbourne. Of course, as I just said, they're hit with no money, so this is a lifeline for them. But the trouble is it makes it easier for these state governments to jump to a lockdown, doesn't it, knowing that people are going to be looked after in this way?
Well, Chris, there are very strict criteria, and obviously it only relates to a Commonwealth designated hotspot, so the Commonwealth does control where those payments go. But certainly I have been very outspoken about the need to move to the model that we see in New South Wales, and I think we've seen a really regrettable situation here in Victoria where the entire state was locked down, and personally I don't think it's justified.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. I just don't know. It's very difficult for people. I know the Victorians watching. I understand that. People don't want to break the law. They want to be part of the solution. They don't want to be the person who's breaking the rules and spreading infections. You want to play the team game where, you know, by the society and community you're in. But when all the data shows it's unnecessary, then it's just so cruel. Now, just on that, obviously a purpose-built quarantine facility is ideal in any situation. Anything purpose-built is going to be better. But hotel quarantine has been the saviour in this country, and most of it's happened in New South Wales, and they've managed it okay. So how does Victoria pull out hundreds of millions of dollars to build a facility that probably won't even be used by the time it's built?
Well, I'm very proud, in fact, that we have reached an agreement in principle with the Victorian government to develop a quarantine facility. I do hope it's at Avalon. That makes the most sense in my view. But this will allow us to bring more Australians home more quickly. It will add to the current quarantine services here in Victoria. So I think it's a very positive announcement, Chris. It gives us more flexibility to keep the economy open. And of course, I hope that it will encourage the Victorian government not to lock down as we have seen over the past 12 months. I think this is a very positive investment which will repay itself in spades. And as for our investment in the construction in these modular accommodation units, I'm very confident that we will see them being reused, whether it's emergency housing or crisis housing or other sorts of uses once the quarantine facility has reached the end of its purpose. So I'm very confident that we will see an ongoing use and a good bang for our buck, so to speak.
All right. Now, just one other question without notice. I know you're, like me, you're a former ABC television journalist. Big news today that the ABC has withdrawn a Four Corners episode that was going to air next week. This Four Corners episode apparently was kind of going to try and draw links between Prime Minister Scott Morrison and the loopy far-right conspiracy mob QAnon. Now, the Prime Minister was asked about this at his press conference today. Let's have a look at that first.
Are you concerned the ABC is involved in so-called vigilante journalism? Were the allegations put to you, and what is your connection to the man at the centre of that story?
Well, I find it deeply offensive that there would be any suggestion that I would have any involvement or support for such a dangerous organisation. I clearly do not. It's also just very disappointing that Four Corners, in their inquiries, would seek to cast this aspersion not just against me but by members of my own family. I just think that's really poor form.
Sarah Henderson, are you concerned that the ABC, and in particular one journalist, Louise Milligan, are just running a series of character assassinations against Conservative figures? George Pell, Christian Porter, and it sounds like Scott Morrison is lined up next.
Well, Chris, I don't know much about this story, but I'm also deeply offended by the reports that I've read today, and I reiterate the Prime Minister's comments in that respect. I am pleased, however, that the ABC's editorial processes are apparently working. This story was sent up the line, so to speak, from Four Corners through to the Managing Director's office, and it appears, based on the reports, that he has stepped in and said it's not appropriate that this goes to air at ABC's editorial standards. So I am pleased that is, in my view, a positive development.
Sarah, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to talk to you, Chris.